Okay, the first thing I gotta say before we start this fucking video is that this is not 2014, 15, or 16 where you're gonna get, on fucking YouTube and spout out a bunch of misinformation and straw man what leftists, who leftists are, what leftism means, and the things that leftists want in society and shit like that. Like, the worst part about it is I actually do like alternate history. I like to follow alternate history hub. And until I saw this bullshit, I was subscribed to this channel, this what art history or whatever. What if art history and or whatever and shit. And I have to say that this is literally one of the dumbest fucking videos I've ever seen in my life, and it echoes 2015 anti-SJW content so fucking much, where everything that the left is just completely misrepresented down to a bunch of whiny children complaining about a society that's already perfect and shit. There is problems in society. This is the first thing, because I need to do a little bit of priming before we get into this video. There are problems in society. There's problems as in, with white nationalism and fascism and how it affects our society and how it affects our government, how it affects our policing, how it affects our hiring practices and shit. And it's not just coming down to race. We can also talk about how it affects queer people or even women. There's a problem with how capitalism is rigged up in America. There's so many people in America who cannot afford a $400 emergency. So many people that can't afford to even move out of their parents' homes because the system is not enabling upward mobility like it once did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Shit wasn't even perfect back then, especially for African Americans. But at least with a lot of the union jobs, a lot of typical white men could make something of themselves working in a factory or some shit like that. My point being is that, America has never been a perfect place to live. We will say that. And that there are still things that we can work on to make this country a better place to live. And that's the only thing that, leftists, like myself, I'm a Christian socialist, and, regular socialists and anarchists and even the communists are really asking for is just for society just to be a little more egalitarian on a social and economic level, because there's so many, because I would spend all day priming this, but there's so many problems that, we probably get into some of the shit throughout this video that we could fix. Number two, or I might be on three at this point. We just gonna say fucking three. Left leaning politics is not in an attack on straight white people. It's an attack on social normality and the economic injustice that so many people, including a lot of straight white men, have to face in our capitalist society. And people that are victims of, discrimination because they don't fit the bill of what it means to be a normal American. Your gay people, your outspoken women, your people of color and shit like that. And it's about showing people that it's more to society than just straight white people. I'm sure everybody already knows that, but up until, I wouldn't even say recently, up until the late 80s and early 90s and shit, especially when hip hop started getting bigger, black people and Latino people, especially, we can talk about how on TV they are relegated to some of the, we will say, tasteless roles. And like I said, that it's such a big story about what leftism means and what it actually really is, and this straw man about it's just people whining over nothing and hating white people is just not so. And the last thing I'll say, I did a take on this earlier, which I feel like was way stronger, is that this kind of reminds me of not only old anti-SJW like Chris Reagan and Rob Rance and all the rest of the motherfuckers. It kind of reminds me of the Quartering and Geeks and Gamers, where they try to co-opt nerd culture of some kind, whether it's gaming or anime or, even action figures, and they use it to, bring people in, and then they bitch about a black person being in a Marvel movie or something like that. And this really gives me that same fucking vibe. And you know, I really feel bad because a lot of nerdy guys fall for this shit because they get bullied. They deal with you know, social rejection and, you know, other problems and stuff like that. And other problems and stuff like that. Sorry, I had a text message and stuff. And they you and then they will wind up because, you know, because they're angry, because they're young, because they don't have the best judgment, especially when you're angry at the way you've been treated, or you feel like in a type of way you've been rejected from society. This is really what we're doing right now. Let me see, I gotta answer this later. I will though. So yeah. Anyways, these people, like I said, they're young, they're angry, they probably been through some bullying, and when somebody tells them, "Oh, it's because you know you're nerdy," which can be a reason why you get bullied, but then they add in their caveats of, "Oh, you're straight, you're white, you're traditional." You know, they might not even use necessarily like, you know, completely conservative or white supremacy dog whistling. And a lot of black people like take the some black guy like that guy fell into it and shit. And people wind up with either reactionary beliefs or just simply right wing or conservative beliefs, and at the worst, these people can get funneled to somebody like Nick Fuentes after being told that there's some type of weird attack on straight white men and shit like that. And that's what this video does. It's just using his channel because, like I said, it's a form of nerd culture, you know, niche culture, and he's funneling people into white supremacy. And people like this, I don't know if they are knowing of it or not knowing of it, because the way that they strawman, like, and you know what it means to fight for social justice and what it means to actually care about, you know, unionization or you know, ending, you know, making sure schools have proper funding, making sure we get homeless people off the street and then to work and give them a nice place to stay and shit like that. And they turn it into, oh, this random woman with like red hair just, or you know, or blue hair or whatever, they just hate straight men, and yeah, you gotta fight against these people because they're cringy and dumb. But it's so much more to, you know, whether we talking socialism, anarchism, communism, or even liberalism, then these people really let on. And of course, you know, you got the attached movements like feminism, you know, queer liberation, black liberation, you know, Latino like liberation and shit like that. And these people just strawman all social justice, whether it's for immigrants, whether, like I said, it's for people of color, for queer people, and, you know, for women as, oh, they're just complaining. But it's so much rich history and so much more to the story about when we like really talk about the grievances that people have with society. I think that's enough priming, and we might as well just start the video. This video, I watched a little bit of it, but I want you to look up what gish galloping means, because this is a misinformation gish gallop where he says a bunch of points, oh, social, and it's like, it's even hard to respond to, because I watched the person that inspired me to start doing this respond to it, and it's just so much misinformation. It's like he'd go from saying, oh, these people hate men, and oh, the gay people are complaining about nothing. Oh, I see how it was like this in the past, but now people are taking it too far. And it's just, it's hard to respond to because it's just so much misinformation and like stupid points. I'm gonna do my best, and this is gonna probably be one of my longest videos. I can see this being up to an hour 30 minutes or more, but just keep in mind, if I just sit quietly or, you know, I pause it and drink some pop, it's because this is a lot of bullshit fit into a, not even a short video, but in like within 2 sentences. It's just so much misinformation and misrepresentation of what actual left wing movements or arguments actually are, and it's just hard to respond to it all. And it's meant to misinform people because you know, you got a lot of people that's already assuming, and what wound up happening is when he's hodgepodging you with all this misinformation, you're just like, yep, and he's not elaborating on the greater causes of, these social justice movements and what have you. And I can guarantee you, to even debate anybody or have a conversation, this guy would be way too much of a pussy to debate or talk to anybody about any of the nonsense. And I think I said it at the beginning of this video, and I have to say this one more time. This is not 2014 to 2015 where you're going to get, because there's so many leftists on the internet now, myself as being probably one of the newest ones. You're not going to get on here and do this shit anymore, where you misinform people into, being reactionaries, or at worst being Nazis.
Last summer, the United States had one of the very, very few rebellions in its history. 6 blocks of downtown Seattle formed an anarchist state that declared independence from the...
Wait a minute. It wasn't a rebellion. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it wasn't even really a rebellion. It was just one isolated protest that kind of got out of hand. Some people tried to do some crazy stuff, talking about they wanted to separate from the country. And even though I'm sure their intentions was good, what they did was pretty crazy. Any normal person can say that. And these people with the crazy shit that they did does not represent all leftists and left-wing movements as these violent militant people that he's trying to make it seem like everybody is by showing these pictures and, doing this scary, they rebelled and all this other shit. And I would hope, because he's a history guy, he would think when the South rebelled, that was a bad thing. He would say the Civil War is about slavery. I hope, if I was ever to talk to this son of a bitch. But my point being is that leftism is not about being violent and fighting police and isolating and, doing shit like this. Leftism can range from marches to working at soup kitchens, or even just talking to people, or, about the state of the world, or handing out union pamphlets. There's many ways where you could do praxis in leftism. Just because some people did some crazy shit like this does not mean that's what leftism is, and that's what leftism should be represented by, as a few people taking things a little too far and trying some shit like this.
In the United States of America, they fought with the authorities alongside demanding the abolition of the police in general. Roving bands of protesters looted the city. Their utopian state literally collapsed into a dictatorship run by a SoundCloud rapper in the first couple hours, and they ran out of food from the first day.
SoundCloud rapper. You see what I'm saying? Like, this invalidation of why this happened and the conditions. I guess he's going to get into it because I see the George Floyd thing, but it's so much more than just George Floyd. That he's reducing it down to it's just this weird ignorant people led by a SoundCloud rapper, and like I said, ignoring the greater context to what's going on and why these people would do something like this.
At the same time, erecting literal shrines to George Floyd.
Misinformation hodgepodge. It's not a shrine, it's a memorial. Because George Floyd represents the problem in America with both poverty, drug addiction, and people not treating drug addiction as a medical issue and treating it as a criminal offense. And also not white supremacy, but police brutality against African Americans and Latino people. That's what George Floyd represents. That's why people say his name, spray paint his face and pictures on everything. It's because he was a perfect representation of everything that that leftists and liberals fight to prevent from happening. Is a man addicted to drugs with no help under the boot of power mad police officers. And that's why they made this memorial and spray painted his name on it. Even here in Detroit, it's memorials to George Floyd. It's not because people worship him. It's because he represents the problems in America.
Shockingly, the reason it survived so long was that they were supported by the mayor of Seattle, who refused to evict the rebels. Left-wing media...
Maybe because it was going to be optically bad, and he didn't want to go up in there with a bunch of police officers beating the shit out of civil rights protesters. And he decided, for the time being, to stand down. And eventually it got broken up. So clearly the mayor didn't fucking care. That rhymed.
In turn, reported this case in a very skewed...
See what I'm saying? It's a misinformation hodgepodge. We are 40 seconds into this video, and we got 4 lies within 40 seconds.
way, describing the revolt as like a block party or peaceful protests. Some of my friends in Canada and Europe say it was barely even reported over there. This was complemented by riots across the country. I'm sure lots of people of similar...
Fuck you for saying that. It was 98% of Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful, and very few of them got violent. I think the ones in Los Angeles, the one in Portland, Oregon, and Atlanta got violent. The one in Detroit, I'm sure was pretty cool. New York was a little violent. I think New York and Detroit were kind of on the same level, where it didn't get like really violent. It just people broke curfew and got arrested. Instead of bitching about the rioting, why don't you actually say something about why people feel the need to riot? Why did people feel the need to protest in the first place? Instead of sitting here like a bitch saying that people are just randomly rioting for no reason. Let's talk about the way that people wages are lower than any other time in history. How the union busting is running fucking rampant in this country. How people gotta literally fight, and argue with motherfuckers every time it's a black person on TV. How fuckers like you go defend police officers or even white supremacist murderers after they kill a black person or a Latino person or a queer person. Why don't we talk about that shit? The problems with capitalism and white supremacy in this country, instead of you bitching about riots that destroyed insured property. Oh yeah, the worst of the riots, of course, were in the Twin Cities, but what? I mean, like, see my last statement.
Stories, but my friends in Philadelphia saw people use dynamite to blow up ATMs.
And that is a fucking lie, bro. I can guarantee you your friends did not. If they saw that shit, they should have fucking recorded it. I do not believe this. There's no way in fucking hell typical American rioters are gonna get fucking... First of all, most people that are rioting are using melee weapons. If they are rioting and looting and shit like that, they're breaking windows and stuff to steal whatever's not, whatever's like not nailed down or destroy property. There is no fucking way in hell your typical protester or rioter is carrying in fucking dynamite to blow up ATMs. You have lost your fucking mind. And if that did happen, I'm sure something like that would have been reported in the news. And that's the last thing somebody wants. At the end of the day, if you are rioting, you don't want to attract the police's attention. So the last thing somebody that is partaking in a riot is going to do is use something that creates a large explosion. Have you lost your fucking mind? That's a flat lie.
Spread looting, fires, and breaking cars in wealthy downtown areas. One of my friends from Richmond, Virginia told me that their police station was burned down, as well as literal buses in the street. These riots and rebellions, which were largely supported and never denounced by the mainstream left-wing media, were based around the murder of a single black man in Minnesota.
No, it's more to the story than that shit. First of all, it's because most of the protests were fucking peaceful. 98% of them were peaceful. Barely any of the protests got really violent like this. And then I'm sure like these so-called center-left corporate media is smart enough to know that a person losing their life thanks to drug addiction, poverty, and police brutality is way more important than some insured property owned by a rich person.
What provoked an otherwise rational society to behave in this manner? That's the question of this.
Why don't you... Man, motherfucker. I'm not gonna keep commenting.
Video.
It's taking too long.
Hi, I'm Rudyard, the guy behind Whatifalthistory, and as a YouTuber, I've honestly always loved my fan base, and I'm really thankful for you guys. But I always felt like my community had more potential that hadn't been reached. That there'd be so many different ways
that you could get in on usually I would skip this ad, but what he's basically saying here is he's going to get in on a conservative anti-SJW grift. That's essentially what he's going to do, because he's going to watch them some No Bullshit or Sargon of Akkad or Black Pigeon Speaks and all the rest of them stupid motherfuckers, some Candace Owens, and now that his channel is probably not getting as much traffic as political content, freaking mustache, getting my freaking nose, but since his channel is not getting as much traffic lately and he's out of alternate history ideas, he's gonna start the right-wing anti-SJW grift. This is a fucking grift used to make money from disaffected young, especially white men who are looking for answers to why their life the way that they are, instead of blaming things like traditional gender roles, white supremacy, and capitalism, and or telling people they should go get mental health treatment, or giving people advice on how they can better their lives. He's gonna blame feminists, socialists, anarchists, black liberation organizers, and union organizers for all their problems, and funnel these young white kids into being Nazis. That's essentially what this channel is gonna be. Is just to make money, bro. I'm gonna let you talk, but we done seen this so many times before. Oh, my channel can just be so much more. So why don't you just say I'm getting in on the anti-SJW grift?
We could build a rich community and have beautiful experiences.
That's enough.
Meant to be a breakdown of the social justice movement, pulling on my knowledge of history, philosophy, religion, and just thinking rationally. How did the movement start? What's its underlying psychology?
Rationally, like that Thunderfoot dipshit. You remember it, bro? Like, I remember this shit.
Rationale and where I think it's going. You're going to start to see my political opinions, and even though I'm center-right, I wanted this video to be rooted in common sense and values that all reasonable people from different cultures or political beliefs could agree with.
I can say people on the center-right are not reasonable.
Before we get started, I want to set up several definitions and tell you where I'm coming from.
No, he wants to lie real fast and like prime the video to get you antagonistic against the idea of social justice.
The first of which is that social justice is a very difficult movement to define, as we'll see, because it goes across many different
Not really.
parts of the left in many different fields. But I define social justice as a group whose identity is primarily built around fighting oppressive structures. And as an example of that, not all environmentalists are part of the social...
Wait a minute. Hold up. Nah, nigga, go back. Wait a minute. Hey. This slide is a lie. Because none of this is necessarily true. And a lot of these things can intersect. Like for me, for instance, I'm anti-poverty. I'm anti-poverty because it hurts people and it puts people in a lower class. And I'm also anti-poverty because I know that poverty hurts the black community more. So this slide is it's just weird. Let me read into this a bit more. If your movement is based around ending class oppression, you are a communist. Not necessarily. If it's around cultural oppression, you're a social justice. Not really. Because you can kind of be both also. Because you can be a communist, but you can be, let's say you're a black communist or you are a lesbian communist. So these things intersect. Especially if we're talking about race, because a lot of people that, like I said, like myself, that dislikes class oppression also fights for the rights of African Americans and other groups too. But I'm just saying, like, this slide is a lie and it just reads out really weird. Fighting oppressive structures. And as an example of that, not all environmentalists are part of the social justice movement. Not all eco-fascists. Socialists are part of the social justice movement. Yes, they all are. But the social justice movement has many people who are part of the environmentalist and socialist movement. So I'd say most environmentalists in Western countries are aligned with the social justice movement. As another example, I would say these people right here are not allied with social justice warriors, socialists, or anarchists in any way, shape, or form. Socialists and anarchists vote for liberal politicians as a means of convenience, as harm reduction. Most people on the left do not believe somebody like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or the other two behind them, I can't remember the names, are the means to the end of ending class oppression, racial oppression, or the oppression of women or oppression of colored people. They are allies of convenience, not to be disposed of when it's the time, but as of praxis. Because it's better to have at least liberal capitalist govern our country than a fascist leaning, neoconservative, or something like that in office. And if we can get into the policy prescriptions of the Democrat and Republican Party, but we will just say that, of course, the Democrats are, center left or centrist, and they actually do good things to reduce harm from time to time. The DNC is bought off by corporations too, but they are not as explicit with the white supremacy, and like I said, they actually sometimes pass policies that help working people and people in minority groups. And that's the only reason why socialists and anarchists vote Democrat, is allies of convenience for the time being now. We do not see these people as the end-all be-all saviors of humanity or some shit like that.
President Biden and center-left groups like the New York Times aren't explicitly social justice. They're more center-left, but oftentimes they have lots of social justice people in their alliances, and so end up becoming beholden to them.
Not really, man. What the fuck are you talking about? Joe Biden screwed over all the students in this country, would not relieve the student loan debt. Joe Biden failed to pass his infrastructure bill. Joe Biden didn't withdraw the troops from Afghanistan properly. And this is coming from a left-leaning perspective. I'm not expecting Joe Biden to be perfect, but he's done had some failures, and didn't close the ICE camps and shit like that. Joe Biden has done many things to piss off the left. And like I said, he's not this fucking savior guy that you're trying to paint him to be for all left-aligned people or people with common fucking sense.
At the same time, I don't stand against anyone who's trying to do genuine good and deal with legitimate oppression.
That's literally what this video is about to be.
Where I would say the movement to get gay rights or the civil rights movement are both good, but I think these people come from a very different tradition than modern social justice. Where Martin Luther King, for example,
Shut up. First of all, I hate it when Republicans or fascists quote Martin Luther King, because you motherfuckers would have hated him and wanted to get him killed if he was alive, if you were alive at the same time back then. Number two, you stupid son of a bitches are always talking about it's going too far. The conservative movement, you call yourself center right, or in the fucking fascists to the right of you, you bitch, complain, and moan every fucking time people get a little bit of dignity to be treated like fucking humans. Whether it be simply this working class white people unionizing, whether it was black people being freed from slavery, whether it's the Civil Rights Act, whether it was the illegalization to be gay, whether it was the exception of trans people, whether it was allowing women to have bank accounts, and whether it's an interracial couple on TV. You people never stop bitching. Everything that happens in society that makes it a better place for people to live, you bitch about. So don't give me this bullshit what you talking about. Oh, it just went too far now because they're letting trans people in the military. No, it always goes too far with you motherfuckers. From slavery to segregation to workers' rights to rights for women to gay rights, you always bitch and complain every time somebody that's not straight and white makes a little bit of progress. Go fuck yourself.
From the American tradition of us all being equal before the law and God, but these modern social justice.
What the fuck did this slide say? I dream people would be judged by characters of skin. Woke's more character doesn't really exist. We can only judge people by their skin tone. Nobody fucking says that. Nobody says that shit on the left. What the fuck are you talking about? It's bad people of every race. Everybody fucking knows that. And I'm more than sure, man. I'm not going to even go there.
People come from a Marxist tradition that tries to tear down the successful rather than pull up the downtrodden.
What are you talking
At the same time,
about? No, man. No, it is not necessarily trying to tear down the successful. The argument from Marxism in the Communist Manifesto written later on is the fact that when a few people own the means of production, it oppresses the rest of the people living in a society. Everybody from Marx to Kropotkin, when they wrote manifestos and they wrote down their philosophy, that was the general idea, is that the means of production should be, democratically owned by the working class and not just by a few oligarchs. The fact that a few oligarchs in our society, whether we talking politicians or the rich people that scum suck off the work of their laborers in society, owns the means of production, leads to, especially with, if you really want to get into like American economic policy, the shit that goes on with that leads to the cycle of poverty and desperation that we see today.
I don't think the right is blameless, and the right has done bad stuff in the last 2 years,
Just
but
a few bad things, really, dog? Are you fucking kidding me? The only thing you can come up with is January 6th out of all the shit that these motherfuckers done did to people. And I'm not saying that you should go look up every single lynching, but you should kind of look up every single right-wing terrorist attacks. You talk about the left being violent and fucking bombing ATMs and shit like that. These motherfuckers are known for more bombings, kidnappings, poll watching, and all the intimidation and the burning down the black businesses and shit, kidnapping people when they feel like it and everything. And when I just said that, that phrase just now, or whatever you want to call it, I'm not talking about white people. I'm talking about far right-wing extremists, racist people, homophobic people. The amount of gay kids that's been like kicked out of their fucking house, the people that have been hunted down and beaten half to death by Nazi punk scum out in the street when a homeless man with a drug problem is trying to sleep and shit, and you really gonna sit up here and talking about some, oh, they're not perfect, and the only fucking thing you got to show for yourself is fucking January 6th? Fuck you.
an ill done on the right doesn't justify an ill on the left. Also, for those of you who are going to say this is a biased rant with no research,
this is a grift-ass video trying to condemn leftism and, egalitarian ideas as hyperactive people who don't know how to sit down, who want to destroy white people. This is a funnel you to fascism video.
I've actually done a tremendous amount of study from all perspectives to get to this video.
No, the fuck you haven't.
Essay. I've read anti-social justice pundits, as well as taking a course.
I know you watched a lot of no bullshit videos before you got started with this shit.
In gender studies, reading foundational texts of social justice, while also reading the philosophical and historical context like I always do with these videos.
No, you don't.
I spent years in social justice-dominated educational institutions, and so I know their arguments inside out. A lot of people don't know how far this movement's gotten, so I'm going to give some examples. For one, the
Biden word on Twitter the other day and they banned me. I think this social justice movement has gone too far.
The administration is referred to women as birthing people because saying mothers might be transphobic.
Who the fuck cares, bro? See, this is what I'm talking about. This is about to be a hodgepodge, hackneyed-ass fusion of, times where maybe a Democrat politician or a feminist has said something stupid and you're going to paint it as being representative of the broader liberal and left-wing movement in the United States, bro. Who the fuck cares about any of this shit? Why don't you engage with the actual arguments against capitalism and white supremacy instead of you bitching and nitpicking the, oh man, this one time, the other day on Facebook, I said, I tried to talk about the skull shapes of black people and I got banned. Oh, we're so oppressed. Why don't you actually engage with the arguments of leftists instead of doing this shit, bro? Nobody fucking cares. I don't fucking care. I'm a leftist. I'm a Christian socialist. And the fact that Joe Biden said this shit because he said birthing people, who the fuck cares? Is this a policy? Do we now gotta go around calling people birthing people? I can't call my mama. I can't call my girlfriend mommy anymore. I gotta call her birthing person.
The Canadian government passed a bill making it illegal.
You is not gonna do this Jordan Peterson ass fucking lie. No, the fuck they did not, dude. It was just an expansion of already existing civil rights protection to apply to more people. Because calling a trans person their dead gender is a form of bigotry.
To use someone's preferred pronouns. The Guardian posts articles saying hating men is okay. CNN supports
Are you fucking serious, bro? We really doing the no bullshit approach. The what's that one stupid son of a bitch Rob Noor approach? where, oh yeah, the left does this, haha, they're hypocrites. But when the black person says they don't like the vaccine, the left is nowhere to be found, haha, the left are such hypocrites, haha. What about this one time when this white person got into a fight at this restaurant when a black person thought he said the N-word, and oh yeah, the left are hypocrites. Oh yeah, this one time this trans person won a race against women. Oh yeah. See, they're hypocrites. They're hypocrites. It's going too far.
Reparations for slavery, something most black people don't support. For the next
Yes, we do support it. I don't know what poll are you reading, but I can go to most black people in my community and I ask them, do they think reparations is valid, even if they don't know the history of why we should get reparations. Martin Luther King was pro-reparation, by the way. They still think they can use some extra money to get ahead in life. What the fuck is this got to say? At least one actor, at least 30% of cast actors. Oh, this is bitching about black and gay people being on movies or women taking roles. This is the I hate Brie Larson shit. Or the I don't want to watch the Harley Quinn cartoon because it's about a woman. We need a real show about Batman. Oh, you know, I wonder if back in the day would somebody like this guy complained about Static Shock or some shit like that. Ignore that. Anyway, like, nobody fucking cares, bro. They're just showing more Alright, let me tell you why corporations do this. It's because people like you hate watch it. Not only do people that actually want more representation for queer people and people of color get their feels at watching a black person be a hero on on television and shit like that, but it makes people like you mad, so you will review it and hate watch it. It's to generate controversy to make the corporation more money. They do it on purpose. And capitalism has that effect sometimes, and to me as a socialist, it's a net positive because fuck people like you. I hope it makes you mad.
next round of Oscars, they have quotas on how many people.
The next movie they come out with that's gonna be like the multi-billion-dollar blockbuster has all gay people in it, just so it make y'all people mad.
From oppressed groups you have to have on the staff of your movie in order to be eligible. These are all moderate.
What? Man, oh my god, they don't say that shit.
Left-wing places as well. I could go on and on with stories like this. In just my personal life, for example, how there were...
Oh, here we go. This one time, I was sitting down in college, and, I was having a hard time getting a girlfriend, and I was thinking, like, the mistake is where we went wrong was letting women vote, and then all the girls came up to me and told me I can go fuck myself, and, that's how you know feminism is going too far.
Protests in the college I went to when the college Republican club tweeted out, "Vote for Trump," or my high school replaced a yearly...
And they told you to go fuck yourself because I was on the college campus skateboarding earlier and I saw a bunch of stickers for like pro-abortion and, poor queer people and BLM and shit like that. It's because I think society is progressing to a point where people are sick and fucking tired of people like you. We're sick and tired of you bitching, complaining, moaning, being regressive, trying to keep our society not just where it is, but go back to an old time of perfect past shit that never fucking existed, where the people you feel like that should be under the boot of white supremacy and, impoverished don't even have a voice to fucking speak out. We ain't going back to that time period. Deal with it, bitch.
Study a foreign country week with social justice week. Alternatively, the only real demographic that really twists my words unfairly and tries to destroy me, especially on Reddit, is these leftists. My friends in the finance
and... I heard that those are not even leftists. You're just a fucking idiot who said... I put it like this. If you make alternate history videos, nobody should take it seriously and try to debunk them because they're fantasy land as videos. But apparently... with you starting up this grift just now, I feel like you're saying a bunch of other dumb shit, and that's why people are dunking on you on Reddit.
Entertainment and tech industries say a significant minority, if not a majority of firms just aren't hiring white men anymore, going entirely...
That is not fucking true, bro. In fact, the problem still hasn't even gotten fixed, even with affirmative action. White people, A black person and a white person can have the exact same resume, go to the exact same fucking college and everything, and the only thing it takes is being named Daquan, Deontay, or Jamal, and you don't get fucking hired.
For diversity hiring. I hate it when
This is entirely anecdotal. I don't know the percentage. I don't know the percentage of, like, and I'm not going to look it up because this is a long video that we got to get through, but I know for a fact that a black person, simply for, especially for having a black sounding name, being named Diamond or some shit like that, or Mercedes, they're more likely to not get a job versus a woman named Emily or Rebecca or some shit. So go fuck yourself, man. There's still problems with racist hiring practices in America.
people say social justice is just a marginal movement, that it's confined to campus as an ivory tower of fools, or
of course it's going to go past that. The thinkers inside these colleges one day become adults who have political influences, and that's why things have slowly and steadily gotten better and more left-leaning over time, to the point where Republicans can't just go on television saying N-word, 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 N-word.
or that it's not that radical. Both of these are normally what moderate left-wingers say to apologize for it in the same way moderate right-wingers do for extreme national...
No, it's completely different, because y'all blow up one street fight. Like if Andy Ngo gets into a street fight, because, you know, he's known for doxing left-wingers and, you know, exposing their names, faces, and addresses, and he gets into a street fight, you'll blow that up into journalism is under attack. They're coming to kill us all. Oh my God, protect yourself. Or how about the one I keep saying, an interracial couple in a commercial, they're coming to get us all. Oh my God, we're gonna fucking die. And then what the right does, y'all actually go up for bat for the worst possible shit. Y'all go up for bat for tyranny, authoritarianism, and just outright white supremacy. Motherfuckers like you were the same motherfuckers going up to bat to defend the stupid motherfuckers that killed Ahmaud Arbery, saying that, oh, he probably stole something. Oh, he looked like a criminal. Oh, he has a gun. And it's not just Ahmaud Arbery. It's every fucking time, to George Zimmerman, to George Floyd, to Orlando Castillo. Every fucking time a black person, a Latino person, even, little Adam got fucking killed after he threw the fucking gun down. And you motherfuckers are up here defending a cop. You defended the bitch that killed Dante. Talking about she grabbed her. Oh, it was an accident. It's an honest accident. You know, you got motherfuckers like Steven Crowder doing, you know, basically essentially mock execution with his friend gently leaning on his back. You motherfuckers defend the worst possible shit. Y'all defend shit. We defend shit like street fights or somebody throwing a brick at a police car. And y'all defend murder, terrorism, and, you know, hatred, whether it's through the state or it's through white supremacists in society. That's the fucking difference.
Nationalists or normal people do for their delinquent cousins. The truth is that this is an ideology that controls much of the entertainment, media, and education world.
No, the fuck it does not, man. If we talking true leftism, the only networks that are truly left is like the Majority Report with Sam Cedar and TOIT. Most media is very fucking corporate and very capitalist. That's why you had that son of a bitch Chris Matthews going to deranged rat about how, oh, if they would have got their way, he would have been brought to Central Park and like executed some shit like that. So I don't know what the fuck you talking about. And then the thing is that y'all I guess y'all assume that the left wing controls media and shit like that. If there's a change in light, it's because my TV is turning off. Is because you can't say racist, homophobic, or sexist shit without consequences, without getting booted off social media or getting fired from your fucking job. It's because society's tired of... and it's like, why don't you Republicans, both you neoconservatives and fascists, just take responsibility? Just take responsibility for your action. Maybe society is sick of dealing with motherfuckers like you. And you need to do some self-introspection about your political views, instead of expecting everybody to kowtow to the way that you want things. This is not your world. You're not going to get everything you want.
On almost every level, and a larger and larger share of the political and corporate worlds. How did we get here, though?
See, that's what I'm saying. I can't say the N-word like I could in 1942.
Social justice is a very organic philosophy in that, unlike Marxism or Christianity, there was no one prophet who set the philosophy out, but instead it kind of just formed from a bunch of different roots and bumped around universities in the 1990s until it became really public after.
We really doing this? We really doing this? Where do I even start with this? Like this dumbass statement about how it just all of a sudden popped up in the 90s. No, social justice and social justice movements have existed. I'm not gonna say as long as humans have in human history, but people have always been begging the question of how we can make society better. That's why we move from feudalism to capitalism, and how people want to move from capitalism to socialism. People seek to make the world a better place regardless of what time period that we're in. Especially even okay, because I just talk America because I'm not really too good on pre-American history. I give you that one. But we could talk about how about America becoming a country in general? That could be thought of as a social justice movement, not being under the thumb of a king oligarch controlling everybody's lives, taxing people unfairly when he felt like it, have troops occupying people's homes and shit like that. We could talk about ending slavery. That could be thought of as a left wing thing. Workers being exploited, not getting any fruits of their labor, and experiencing brutality because what race they are. We can move it intermediate after the end of slavery during Reconstruction about people fighting for black politicians, black people rights to vote, which is an ongoing fight that we still deal with today. And we could talk about how it was never even a start point, but I'm sure, throughout all of history, the fight for queer acceptance has always been raging alongside the fight against, exploitation of labor and the exploitation of people for what race they are. I'm sure women's rights and women's suffrage that broke out within I think the 1900s, I believe, the first feminist movement where women got the right to vote and whatnot over 100 years ago just now in America's 260-year history, I believe. So social justice is an ongoing movement, and it didn't just start in the 90s. And I guess what we know, at least as American social justice movements, could possibly go back hundreds of years. So this bullshit he's talking about where this all of a sudden just popped up in the 90s is just a lie and a baseless conspiracy. Because people have been writing music, so why does Bad Religion exist? Bad Religion sings about anti-capitalism and anti-religion and anti-traditional conservative values, and this band started playing in 1981. But you say social justice is from the 1990s? So I'm assuming the ideas of social justice would be at least a good 10 years older than what the fuck you're talking about, if we was to put it that way. But my point being is that the ideas of social justice, whether we're talking feminism, queer liberation, the liberation of working people, and the liberation of people of color, go back hundreds of years, and it does not go back to simply just the 90s.
The 2008 financial crash, quickly amassing influence over all of society.
It's been going before the 2008 financial crash, because most left-leaning people see shit like that coming, because people need a safety net to protect them from the harm of capitalism. That's the least that our government can fucking do. And without those social safety nets, shit like the 2008 financial crash happens.
People often roast Jordan Peterson for saying social justice formed as cultural postmodern Marxism, but that's historically
Nazi talking point.
Accurate. If you wanted to find the place where the ball started rolling that eventually resulted in social justice, it would be with the
No, not necessarily. It was already anarchists and communists in America at the time. When the fuck did who was the anarchist that killed that president? Let me see real fast, because it didn't start with these motherfuckers that's on the screen right now. Don't get me wrong, their ideas, except for Stalin, were very important to the movement, and the ideas that people that people meld it into their ideology, like Marx, Engels, and Lenin and shit like that. Yeah, who shot McKinley? And that was, yeah, that hadn't happened because he got killed 120 years ago. It was, yeah. So that happened way before the Russian Revolution even happened. So if you're gonna say that, it was already people with these ideas. Theodore Roosevelt, the trust buster. Like I don't know why you're trying to go down this road where like you're mad because people see problems in society and want to make society a better place. People were already adopting the ideologies of communism, socialism, and anarchism and Marxism before the Russian Revolution of 1917. Go fuck yourself.
Disenchantment with traditional Marxism that came during and after World War II. Once leftists realized that Marxism had failed on every single level imaginable by not reaching a utopia, being poorer than capitalism, killing.
Oh my God, bro. We can all just make the argument that these countries were not truly communist or Marxist, but you go, girl.
Tens of millions of people, and not even attracting the working classes, left.
And the death toll of capitalism is ongoing. We have more than enough food to feed every person on the planet, but we don't because there's no profit incentive.
Leftists had to find a new story in order to retain their core beliefs.
What is he
Those weird
about? New story to... I mean, okay, we ain't gonna... This is not a defending USSR or China channel, but if you really look at it like the basis of, like, we just taught class warfare, it's never really ended, and it's the same problem. I mean, it might not be on the scale that a lot of the peasants were experiencing in Russia and China or Mongolia or any of the Eastern Bloc, which is a special situation all by itself because the Eastern Bloc countries became socialist or communist, even though they really weren't, because they were essentially just a barrier wall against the West for Russia. But class warfare didn't end with the collapse of the Soviet Union and still hasn't ended till this day. The idea of class struggle has existed probably throughout all of human history, and it's not really a new phenomenon. And it didn't, like I said, it didn't end with the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe.
Cults that build their entire worldview around the world ending. Normally what happens when the world doesn't end is that those cults fracture and make some minor edits to why their overall story wasn't working. Why the world would actually end 10 years later, or why the world didn't end because blank conditions weren't met.
Okay,
that's what happens here as well with communism.
What the fuck does this say? Why the weird color coordinations? Because tasting and color coordination is a social construction. What the fuck are you talking about? I want to read all these fast. Truth of art lies in its power to break the monopoly of established reality to define what real is. I don't know who ever said that. There's so many consumer society politics. This is because schools are underfunded and don't really help teach children things that they need to know in society. I can tell you that. Teaches you how to have a job. Doesn't really teach you skills like budgeting or cooking and stuff like that. Some schools do in like suburban neighborhoods. My school certainly didn't teach you anything you need to know in life. Oh yes, go fuck yourself. The workers create, the technology, and the capitalists just reap the because the engineers and developers of the technological advances that we see today deserve all the credit for the things that we see and all the innovation. The rich capitalists do nothing but invest money into it, and they reap all the profits of the hard work of those workers. And the United States did prop up Saddam Hussein to fight against Iran after the fall of the Shah. So there's some grievance there where America is known for propping up far right dictatorships in general, as even like Islamic Ba'ath parties and shit like that, or even Islamic extremists, and then it turns and bites us in the ass. That's a known thing through history. And ironically enough, we had to spend billions of dollars invading a country that we propped up, or destroying the equipment of a country that we propped up in 1991. But you go, girl.
The Frankfurt School believed that the bourgeoisie constructed culture, and so the revolution could only take place once the previous culture had been deconstructed enough that the working classes realized that it was inside their true interests to be communists. The emphasis switched from the working classes to women and ethnic minorities, as those groups rose to greater social predominance. Likewise, another branch of former
I mean, what the fuck did he just say? No, it's called promoting class consciousness. People become class conscious whether it's talking to somebody like me or watching, like, actual informative good videos like this one about how the interest of workers, whether you're white, black, queer, or whatever, we all have the same enemy, the same common class enemy, and it's in our own, it's in our own good purpose that we stand together against the rich capitalists, and even furthermore than that, of standing against the rich capitalists, that we seize the means of production for ourselves so people don't have to go hungry or go without things that they need to survive.
Communists in France founded the postmodern movement, which some of my really smart friends tell me actually has deep philosophic merit, but from my perspective largely translates to everything's a social construct for power and there should be no broader stories.
I mean, you dumbass, you can argue that it is. Take race, for instance. In the Roman Empire, race wasn't a fucking thing. You could be a black Roman person, but you were just a fucking Roman. And if you came from the outside, regardless of what race you are, you were, or what skin color you were, I should say, you were a fucking barbarian. We can argue that the only reason why race, especially in the United States, exists as the way that it does, because it's a social caste system to let people know how threatening somebody is, or how somebody should be treated in society. And we could say the same thing about gender. We could say the same thing about so many other, about masculinity and what it means, or femininity and what it means. We can say so much about these fucking social constructs and how they were created to give certain people more power over another.
Postmodernism doesn't believe in any broader theories of the world, but the logic
that postmodernism, I'm sure that's not what it's called,
developed was something like, if broader stories are wrong, we can create a story which is about opposing other people's oppressive stories, which hold down oppressed groups.
This sort of... What? That's not what it's a fucking about. It's about raising all ships at once. Because you can have a white person that's working class and that's a union member, and they have the same class enemy as I do. So this bullshit you're talking where, I guess at the end of the day, people argue, because like I said, people only argue against these social constructs because these constructs exist to oppress certain people. Not because they're doing some vacuous attempt just to deconstruct society because they feel like it.
View became more popular in academia in the 1990s as the baby boomers, who were significantly more left-wing than their parents, took over academia. As the baby boomers gained power...
No, that's not what happened. The status quo changed. Politics moved forward, we can say, where some things that were acceptable before were unacceptable, and things that were unacceptable before were now acceptable. For instance, interracial marriage became acceptable. It became unacceptable for people to go on TV screaming a fucking N-word. It became unacceptable for people to participate in minstrel shows. It became unacceptable for politicians to be openly racist against minority people, or hate or bigoted towards queer people. It became normal for women to hold positions of powers in large corporations and in society as a whole, and even become political candidates. Politics just moved forward because That's what people fought for. And it's not just like, oh, the baby boomers. And it's like, and if we really want to talk baby boomers, a lot of baby boomers are fucking ignorant, dude. You really want to say that? You know how many baby boomers go around saying that, oh, there's these F words all on TV, and they thinking BLM is going too far, and it's not just white baby boomers. It's a lot of black baby boomers that say a lot of dumb shit. So what you're referring to is, like I said, is that the status quo of politics just moved forward. Some things just became more acceptable, some things became unacceptable, and vice versa. And deal with it, because it's a net positive. I think it's cool that a politician has to partake in Southern strategies style, politics, instead of going on TV saying, segregation now and segregation again and segregation forever. Where the fuck he said. It's a net positive to minority people and workers in this country that they cannot be openly discriminated against.
Academic departments went from being around 3/4 left wing to 19/20ths, which resulted in an echo chamber in which.
No, it's not a fucking echo chamber. It's because a lot of to be a conservative Republican or to be a fascist, you got to get used to being objectively wrong and promoting feelings-based, factually incorrect information about various subjects in society.
Pandering to one's own faction was the way to get ahead. As the boomers entered academia, you saw the development of various departments like women's, race, post-colonial, and queer studies, which largely existed as ideological laboratories for the movement that would develop.
Not really. Maybe these are things that people want to study and learn more about. You ever just thought of that? Whether we talking any of the shit you just said or sociology, maybe there's a greater analysis that people can, maybe, just maybe, studying these philosophies and these ideas make the world a better place. It makes us smarter. Like, you ever thought of that?
Social justice theory developed.
It readies us to deal with these problems when they come up about how we should treat certain people. And it picks our brains to get us thinking about how we can make society better. You ever think that's why like queer studies exist, or gender studies, or African American literature classes exist? Is to learn history and see how we can make society a better place. Instead of you getting on here bitching, they're trying to stop the white man from, they're just becoming so progressive now, and they're taking all our power away.
All these various departments working together in a common ideological.
I need a break. And I'm ready.
Coalition. We'll go through these later, but a lot of the inconsistencies that came from social justice theory derive from how it was a series of unrelated academic departments.
There's not really any inconsistencies, and it's called intersectionality, I guess, is what we're going to get into, how different forms of oppression can intersect with one another to affect someone's life. Like how I'm a straight black man, but I'm also working class. How that can affect my life in one way or another. Or if it was just like, let's say like a bisexual white woman or some shit like that, and how that can affect her life. So like, and like I said, a lot of the, if we want to call them complaints and grievances that, social justice warriors, whether we talk, socialists, anarchists, and liberals have with society, they are valid complaints against capitalism, white supremacy, gender normality, against queerphobia and, etc. These are valid complaints about the way we got society structured, and they're asking questions about how we can make society a more accepting place for people who don't necessarily live their life by your rules.
That were allied in a common ideological cause. Let me give an example. It's why it's acceptable to change between genders but not between races. A cornerstone of social justice theory is that oppressive identities are fake and should be deconstructed as a moral good in of themselves, while subjugated identities are real, since they pull on the supposedly real or subjective experiences of the oppressed.
What the fuck did he just say? Hold up a second. What? Because like I said, that's all this
is that oppressive identities are fake and should be deconstructed as a moral...
Because they are fake. Because none of the shit that we believe as... things, because like I said, a lot of the social constructs like race and gender only exist to exude power structures over certain kinds of people.
Good in of themselves, while subjugated
especially race
identities are real, since they pull on the supposedly real or subjective experiences of the oppressed. Thus, for a white person to become a black person is evil, since it infringes upon the black person's positive identity.
Meanwhile, what is he even talking about at this point? Fuck it. I mean, I need a break anyway from talking, so I'm gonna let him ramble through his weird ass conspiracy theory.
While for a man to become a woman is good, since it breaks down the oppressive structure of gender, even though in real terms the biological differences between the sexes are far greater than those between the races. Another version of this is that the feminist movement is in contradiction.
That's completely fucking different. I'm just not realized what he just said, even though it was just a dipshit conspiracy theory. First of all, you can't change what race you... you can't change your skin complexion to be, or it's just, how can I put this shit? It's completely different changing your race and changing your gender is two different things. Gender is a matter of how you express yourself. Your race, even though we don't believe that that's really a thing either, we can't say, cannot be changed in the same way. You can't, you can, and then at the end of the day, there's no such thing as acting black or acting white. If you really want to get down to it, you just be yourself. For instance, I'm a African American that loves like punk rock and skateboarding and shit. I'm just expressing myself and being myself. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to act white. So these constructs and how they can be broken down or ignored, like a lot of trans people do, more power to them, is completely different. There's differences between the breakdown of race and the breakdown of gender expression. And then even with my argument earlier, you can see how race is really stupid, because what determines what race somebody is besides their skin color?
Prediction with the trans movement, in that if gender doesn't exist and is oppressive, then women's separate identity as women, which is biologically ingrained, carries no value. This is the root of the
Nobody fucking says that, man. Oh my god.
Trans feminist faction called TERFs. The thing that really elevated social justice into the public consciousness as an important ideology was the process of growing social tensions that I've talked about in these videos, largely driven by a combination of population growth and globalization. This meant the standard of living has in real terms gone down in Western countries for the last...
Because neoconservative and fascist policies being imposed on different countries in this world, especially if we talk in the United States. We could talk about Reagan's deregulation or Nixon starting the drug war, the wrapping up of the police state and police budgets. The overinvestment into the military and lack of investment into public infrastructure is causing the problems that we see today. We won't even simply make $15 minimum wage. But yeah, it's trans people playing basketball with women. Sure, dog, whatever.
50 years, which when paired with growing inequality caused an immense amount of social tension which created political...
Who's causing it? It's direct, especially if we talk in the United States of America. Like I just stated, all that shit that Nixon did and Reagan did, and don't get me wrong, liberal politicians assisted him along ahead. Hello, Mr. Crime Bill Joe Biden. We're going to take everything, all your assets. We can talk about so many things, mandatory minimum sentences. We can still talk about hiring discrimination. We can talk about not treating drug addiction as a medical issue and treating it as a criminal offense. There's so many problems in society that are literally caused by profit motivations or to keep certain people under others. And instead of solving these problems and making the world a better place, we go to this individualist, you should pull yourself up by the bootstraps and work 2 jobs shit instead of just making minimum wage $15. Or we got to hear Ben Shapiro going 20-minute rants about, you know, how trans people in the military is going to be the end of Western civilization. So it's people like you, dog. Like you did that little intro. What was it? Like, let me look. Because you did like a little intro about your grift right here at 1 minute 52 seconds. People like you know, you from the media apparatus, people like you that make fucking videos like this, to the actual conservative politicians, whether we talking people like Mitch McConnell, we can talk about Trump punk ass, or we can go back in the day and talk about people like, you know, even Bill Clinton. Is shit like this is his fault. Shit like this is Joe Biden's fault. Shit like this is damn sure Nixon's fault. Shit like this is the fault of neoliberalism and conservatism and fascism and white supremacy, is why we see such a decline in life in our country. Oh yeah, and capitalism, because most of our politicians are bought off, so they don't really give a fuck about helping your fellow American. Well, their fellow American. Which is due to capitalism and the lack of laws that make sure campaign donations can't be pocketed. Point being is that there's actual policies and a story behind why things the way that they are nowadays. The standard of living in America didn't just, it just dropped out of nowhere. You ain't gonna talk about the union busting led by Ronald Reagan and the deregulation of industry, the lack of robust, you know, labor laws in the United States. The fact that, like I said, schools are underfunded, no investment in mental health services, no social safety net to ensure if somebody makes a mistake they don't become homeless. The fact that there is very little balancing against the rich capitalist and your typical worker in America. We ain't gonna talk about none of that shit, and we're just gonna pretend like, oh yeah, this one time in this article, a woman says she hates men. And then you getting in on this fucking grift, bro. Like, yeah, fuck you.
Polarization. This is really plain to see in that all the social justice keywords skyrocketed from complete obscurity to the public view with the failure of the Occupy Wall Street movement, which came shortly after the 2000.
I will say, I give them this one a little bit, but the rise of social justice kind of really happened because the failures of hold on, let me. Why? It's the failure of something. Failure of capitalism. Yeah, that's what it is. The failure of capitalism, and the fact that most people can't afford a $400 emergency. The fact that people are getting kicked out of their fucking homes. The fact that a lot of young people are going to be ranked with student debt for the next 15 to 20 fucking years is the fucking reason why so many people turn to radical politics in general to solve the problems in this country. And it's led by politicians like Bernie Sanders, I'll give you that. But social justice and the idea of being anti-capitalist and seeing the problems in society for what they are not only not new and always existed in America anyway, but they became more popular because neoconservative and neoliberal policies made people poor and continue to make people poor.
2008 financial crash. The 2008 crash resulted in a rapid decline in standard of living, and like every other similar era of history, people fell into extremist ideologies that looked for scapegoats. In a system which seemed biased towards privileged white males,
I
for
wonder what's
example of
they
bailing
skip.
out the banks,
I
well,
wonder. No, we ain't gonna do this, bro. Cause I'm gonna let you go ahead with your conspiracy theory in a second about see. I primed this video because I knew you was gonna say some shit like that. I wonder who the right wing's scapegoat. I'm sorry. To any Jewish person that watches this, I even got like a Jewish non-binary friend, and I apologize to her for making this joke. Who are the right wing's scapegoats? Who are y'all scapegoats? If we have scapegoats, what are right wing scapegoats?
the economy fell apart, it looked reasonable. At the same time, the internet made populist
The failure of capitalism, where it has to die every 7 years and fucking revitalize itself from the corpse of the workers in the country.
movements like social justice easier to form. The internet made populism
I mean, I give them that one.
of both right and left-wing varieties more powerful, and we definitely see this with social justice. A movement.
And I cannot believe I got in on his grift about 7 years late. I mean, the anti-SJW stuff was big back then. I could have been a whole Nazi channel.
Promulgated and advanced collectively through the internet rather than through more mainstream top-down political ideologies. I always wondered why social justice behaved in such a strategically irrational way. I mean, this is a movement that literally shits on its own followers as terrible people and actively looks for the most powerful.
Let me tell you something. It's a lot of straight white men that are socialist politicians, or at least become liberal politicians, because they're smarter than you. That's why Bernie Sanders is a socialist, because he's smarter than you. That's why. Because Bernie Sanders is not a right-wing hack dipshit trying to get in on the anti-SJW grift 7 years later, talking about how straight white men are being blamed for all the world's ills, when at the end of the day people are just blaming social normalities and capitalism for their problems. But instead of engaging with those arguments, you bitch about it and you run from the arguments and you pretend like everybody's just blaming white people when you know damn well it's more to the stories. I thought you said you did your research.
And largest groups in society and says they're evil. But I didn't realize that this is primarily a mob-driven movement, not one that's controlled top-down. When I say social justice is irrational, I'm not being biased. I'm stating a literal fact of its philosophy.
You said you was a neoconservative center-right earlier, so this is pretty biased if you ask me, saying that it's just completely irrational. And like I said, if you don't want to go with, like, because I'll say his name because Vosh did this video earlier and shit. If you don't want to talk to him, talk to me. Because you are full of shit, man. Because you are refusing to engage with any of the problems that we see in society. You won't even come up with right-wing conclusions, which are usually really fucking terrible. You ain't coming up with no solution to our problems. And you're barely even talking about why these social justice movements exist. I'm not going to say social justice movements will disappear, because there'll always be a fight to make the world a better place. So I don't think social justice warriors will ever just like disappear. But the fact that you're refusing to engage with the arguments, or the facts that, the damage that capitalism and white supremacy and these socially constructed norms that we have are doing to society, that it does to people's mental health, that it does to people's finances, is really kind of galling. Unless you just think like racism doesn't exist, sexism doesn't exist, or homophobia doesn't exist. I can do the same fucking thing. I can pull up a bunch of articles of bad shit happening to people because of their class or their social identities. Like I said, like, this left-wing movement has existed hundreds of years to make society a better place. And it continues to exist for a reason. Like, I don't know what you're talking about is irrational. Unless you're still on the same shit earlier, where, like I said, straight white socialists are just smarter than you, and they know that these movements don't exist to destroy, white people, which is a Nazi argument, by the way. And also the simple fact that, like I said, because it's too many in the name. We have problems in society that we can work on. And you're refusing to engage with any of the arguments, and you're just strawmanning, social justice warriors, leftists, as just being people crying over nothing. Very biased.
That even its founders would agree with. Like some right-wing parody of left-wingers, they believe that logic and objective reality are Western constructions. They take the postmodernist argument that all ways of knowing are social constructions and combine it with the Marxist viewpoint that all culture can be explained as a struggle
At this point, I don't know what the fuck he talking about.
Between the oppressor and the oppressed. The Smithsonian, or the most important government-owned museum system in America, released this chart of whiteness, which went about describing whiteness with characteristics like hard work, being on time, or rational objective thinking.
This is a corporation, and then I can make arguments for that stuff too, but this is a corporation that is a museum to make money that's not necessarily written by leftists. This could have been written by a liberal. And even if it was written by a liberal or a leftist, there's still arguments to be made about certain things being associated with certain people. And how we need to stop doing that. Because white people ain't the only people that can be on time.
First problem is that these are just objectively good things, and that societies that work hard automatically crush those that are lazy and are wealthier, but also that...
Why do we have to work hard?
These aren't white either. The Celts in Britain at the birth of Christ had a value system that didn't value hard work or objectivity, and they're equally white. Meanwhile, the Muslim world used to be in the cutting edge of science. Similarly, if you go to a university STEM class in North America today, most of the students...
Colonization happened. Don't just skip over that.
...will be Asian. The most punctual, hardworking people in the world today are in Asia. Science obviously isn't a Western way of...
Here's the Richard Spencer argument. I'm not really a white supremacist or anything. I'm an Asian supremacist. All these Asian people and everything that they achieved.
Knowing, since other cultures are wholeheartedly embracing a scientific worldview,
I'm not going to even get through this whole video. I might just go to 20 minutes and then just make an outro, because it's really hard to get through every little lie, because there's so much lying and misinformation in this video, and I know he's going to be too much of a bitch to want to discuss this and have a debate about problems in society with anybody, no matter how big or small their channel is. And this is fucking ridiculous, man.
It can be objectively proven. Ask an educated Indian.
So much misinformation and bullshit points. You have a minute, and we can go from and he can just have, we could just be talking about, let's say, gay people, and then the next thing you know, he's talking about some, the gay agenda, the gay people have gone too far. Now it's gay people all on TV. My son's gay. I don't know what I'm gonna do. They're gonna come to my house and arrest me and all this other shit. Dude, there's so much misinformation in just 1 or 2 minutes of this video, man. He's really trying to get in on this conservative grift.
And if they support the oppressive Western way of scientific knowing, or their traditional magic systems, which, by the way, all races used to believe in, they'd say science without a thought. This all ends up being a backwards form of racism that exists to assuage the guilt of
I'll put it like this. There is a problem with overzealous leftists and liberals who feel and express white guilt, or say that white people should feel guilty, but white people shouldn't feel guilty about society. They should just, do what's necessary to make society better. Nobody has to be ashamed for being what race they are. Nobody chooses to be what, nobody chooses what race they're born as. But the arguments is just recognize that white people have a certain place in history and in society, and maybe some white people should step forward to make society a better place in one way or another. The argument is not, by the way, you should be ashamed for being white. The argument is just, like I said earlier, whiteness has a very special place in society and history, and maybe a few white people should step forward to make society a better place. And if we're going to talk race especially, this is kind of overtaking the fact that, because like I said, this is overtaking the fact of all the damage done by white supremacy in the Western world. And even the Eastern world to some extent, white supremacy has in some way or another harmed people. So, yeah. A lot of misinformation in about 10 seconds.
Smug liberals at the expense of actually oppressed groups. Look at rap culture, in which modern culture literally encourages antisocial traits like,
Oh my fucking god, dude. Here we go with this racist shit.
like crime, drug usage, or broken families in the African American
It's my nigga
community,
Easy E.
since to judge it would be racism.
No,
However,
you stupid son of a bitch. Let me tell you something. Okay. First of all, rap music is not the only violent music. We could talk about metal and punk rock has plenty of music about beating people, killing people, people harming their wives and girlfriends, and many other things. Country music has songs about killing their wives and beating people and shit like that. And that's about probably the most whitest. I mean, don't get mad because I know it's a few black country singers. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but country is probably the whitest, most white dominated genre of music, and at the end of the day it still has a lot of harmful lyrics and promotes a lot of harmful beliefs and shit like that. But we could talk about the reason why rap music the way that it is. Rap music the way that it is, especially with my man's Eazy-E right here, exists because the drug war bankrupted black people from having many opportunities in the world and in society, and it causes people to turn to street crime to make it.
However, this has really negative effects on the black community. We should be supporting the productive elements of the African American community, not the most.
And we do, man. Then at the end of the day, we can also make the argument that it's just fucking music. Just because somebody listens to a genre of fucking music does not necessarily reflect on who that person is and what they do. It's plenty of black college students. It's plenty of white college students. Hey, speaking of which, bitch, you know something is the fact that most of the ridiculous ass rap music that you're talking about, because I don't like trap rap either, is consumed by white frat boy party motherfuckers. It's not consumed by African Americans exclusively. And then number two, is plenty of black people like myself. Hey bitch, you see me wearing this Bad Religion shirt? You know how much I skate to the album Suffer or No Control? Just because somebody is black does, and I'm somewhat successful. I got a good job and a place to fucking stay. And you, like I said, this is just, I don't know if I'm like getting sensitive because I'm sleepy, but I can argue that this is just fucking racist, dude. Because every black person don't like that fucking music, and then most of the audience for that bad music is just white people. And then we can also talk about the simple fact that just because somebody listens to a certain genre of music does not necessarily mean that they are that type of person. You got pastors and preachers, I'm sure, listen to love songs about, fucking and being promiscuous, but I'm sure a lot of these like priests and preachers and shit are not promiscuous people. The music does not necessarily dictate who a person is and how they fucking look, or their political predilections. So what the fuck is you talking about, man? And people do raise up black people who make it. And who the fuck cares what music they listen to, man?
Antisocial. Alternatively, look at West Coast cities like Vancouver or Los Angeles that have horrifying drug and homelessness problems, largely
neoliberalism and neoconservatism.
Caused by the lack of an ability
neoliberalism and neoconservatism
to judge on the part of a morally handicapped elite. The city of Vancouver had a policy of not judging homelessness and drug usage, with their only real policy being having clean government-controlled sites to shoot heroin in.
Which is a valid thing. That prevents them from being criminals and getting into dangerous situations. That prevents from it being an AIDS epidemic where they're using dirty fucking needles. That has, drug users being humanized so they don't feel like criminals or are treated like criminals for their addictions. This is an objectively good thing.
Staying in downtown Los Angeles last week, and the homelessness crisis had made an otherwise wealthy and cool area into a deeply unpleasant and nearly uninhabitable.
Thanks to the policies you support, which you have, I'm glad I didn't click it by accident, which you refuse to get into the American conservative policies, or the fact that a lot of our politicians are bought off by wealthy people that promote policies of self-reliance, individuality, working multiple jobs, etc., etc. Y'all refusing to raise wages, anti-unionization, and many other policies, and both socially and economically on paper, are causing things like homelessness and shit like that. The fact that in a lot of places people can't get like actual medical treatment for drug addiction keeps that homeless epidemic going in America. The fact that you motherfuckers don't want to build public housing. I think I heard a Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson skit just a few weeks ago where California, I think, said they was gonna build some towers for homeless people to live in, and it's, you got stupid motherfuckers like you that go around on my tax. So instead of the tax dollars going into police riot gear to beat and attack homeless people, it's going into a tower where they can live and become some form of human and maybe get a job and better themselves. You rather see homeless people, still on the street with nothing or getting, harassed by the police. Again, refusing to engage with the arguments, refusing to engage with the policies that are causing the problems that we see today in society.
Habitable place with the sheer amount of crazy homeless guys. However, mental illness and drug abuse is when people aren't in their right minds, and considering that Western societies had practically none of either 60 years ago, means that this is a pretty easily solvable problem. These addicted people and their families, whose lives they've often really hurt or ruined,
and
would probably...
we don't do it because of people like you, especially because Republican politicians. We got easy solutions to things like homelessness and drug addiction, but we never pass policies for these social democratic endeavors because motherfuckers like you bitch about you don't want your taxes going to homeless people or drug addicts.
Probably in the long view be thankful for a government that doesn't act like a smug, negligent parent. At its heart,
That's exactly what the American government is. Because that's just like the argument I made earlier about them refusing to balance the weight of capitalism against, for the American workers.
Justice is a poorly constructed religion more than anything else. Just look at its main text.
Religion, man, come on.
Today, like how to be an anti-racist and white fragility, which boil down to an idea.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of white fragility in this video, you bitch.
Idea of original sin in which white people must admit they are always racist no matter what they do.
Nobody says that. That's Robin DiAngelo shit, man. Get the fuck out of here. Nobody says that all white... Nobody really says that shit on the left, really. I mean, I guess you can make an argument that people say that all white people have their prejudices and you should seek to address them and be a better person. But nobody goes around just saying all white people are racist and you should be ashamed of yourself for being white. People make the arguments that, like I said earlier, I gotta say this again, white people have a special place in society and a special place in history. It should be acknowledged, and most white people should work to make society a better place, or at least some white people. Or at least acknowledge the fact that white supremacy is a thing. You can start with the bare minimum. And you don't have to, and it's not asking anybody to be some, self-hating hero. The argument is just that, hey, white people have done some things.
And nearly every action a white person does is inherently racist due to the racist structure of society.
Nobody says
Nowhere
that, dude.
Actual steps to deal with racial iniquities in the real world proposed. The cardinal flaw of the modern world, which our descendants will just facepalm continually, is our arrogance and overestimating human abilities.
Remember, right-wing authoritarianism exists. Always remember that.
All the cool philosophies that developed since the Industrial Revolution, such as communism, fascism, and the various fads that
Communism is not really supposed to be authoritarianism. Stalin was not a communist. He was a communist in name only. He was an authoritarian. In fact, you can make the argument that Stalin was just a red fascist, which is a real term you can Google, because he gulagged and killed millions of people, invaded country, was very imperialistic, believed in a power structure, a top-down power structure, which a communist isn't supposed to live in. And before the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, he sided with the Nazis pretty much by helping them invade Poland. So this weird thing you're trying to put off as Because, there's a libertarian right and a libertarian left. That all leftism is authoritarian because Stalin was an authoritarian, or Mao, or whoever was an authoritarian. It really doesn't hold up once you really know the history.
Past all failed since they acted as humans, and especially humans in positions of power are capable of doing everything. This is a critical flaw in social justice philosophy, which believes that human nature is inherently changeable and all disparities can be solved. A great example of this comes with disparities, in which social justice philosophy believes that if there's any disparity, it must be the consequence of oppression. This ignores how immense disparities are the norm across almost every field you can think of. For example, every single one of the 20 tallest mountains in the world is in Asia. Or alternatively, the Germans ended up being the top piano manufacturers for all of history. The idea that oppression is the cause of almost every social factor is silly when you look at the horrifically legally...
It's really silly when you really think about it, bro. I'm getting too sleepy to respond to this shit, and I guess I'm probably in the video. I'm trying to make it to 20 minutes, but like I said, it's number one, I gotta work tomorrow. Number two, it's just so much misinformation packed into 2 or 3 minutes for this grifty ass video that it's hard to really respond to.
Repressed Chinese in Indonesia who own...
Oh, that's what we was talking about. Hey, colonization and neo-colonization has negatively affected the lives of millions of people across the world and continues to hurt people till this day. That is not up for debate. We can argue that, certain things happened and certain good came out of it, but we can also argue about the people that were objectively hurt, like the Native Americans or the Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War, or the many proxy wars that or like shit in Argentina where we propped up far right dictators. Colonization and neo-colonization hurts people. Period, bro.
71% of the country's economy, while also only being 3% of the population. In short, you can't find a single statistic that isn't incredibly power law distributed. Take the gender pay gap, in which the average woman makes 76 cents for the average man, which has effectively been the rallying cry for the modern feminist movement.
I'm so fucking tired of this shit, bro. Like I said, I'm not gonna make it through this entire fucking video. It's been way too many stories on the news and shit like that where, like I said, I talked about that African American one where, like I said, if he turns in an application, if his name is Jamal or some shit, he's more likely to not get the job. And you have times where white women will get jobs and shit, like the Blizzard controversy, and then no matter how hard they work, they never move up in the company or gain the same opportunities. Women are even shut out of certain jobs for just simply being women. Women are kept out of certain fields and not taken seriously in certain fields, which leads to the gender pay gap. And yeah.
However, once you account for children, women actually make more money. Likewise, once experience and hours worked is accounted for, you find it shrinks to 96 cents for every dollar. Social justice believes all hierarchies are inherently oppressive, and hierarchies
because they are
based on actual...
There's no justification for any hierarchy.
Skills and ability are all evil.
Race, gender, or sexuality. Trying to look down on top of people, trying to look down on people from the top of a mountain for no reason. There's no excuse for any of these socially constructed hierarchies. No reason for it.
An example of this is that when Western businesses go to third world countries and pay workers there wages lower than first world...
Yeah, and that's really fucked up because these third world countries get shit deals, and if they try to nationalize their resources or economy, they're more likely to A, get economically debilitated, or B, get invaded or cooed.
World countries, it's called oppressive. These companies almost always pay higher wages than the local economy does, and are paying the wages they're allowed at the lower productivity.
No, the fuck they are not, bro, because what happens is that these companies go in to exploit these working people, bro. Like, look at the banana republics and shit like that, and all the shit that's happening, like Venezuela, what they are trying to do to Cuba and stuff like that. These companies, they purposely go to these poor people who don't have a developed society, and they know that their government is looking for some kind of opportunity to make their country at least a little better, People are looking to make money. People are desperate, so they'll do anything just to make a little bit of money. So not only do they play off people desperation, they play off people lack of resources because they know that these governments cannot resist. The number one, they can't resist the opportunity, and then number two, even if they would resist the opportunity, like trying to nationalize the economy or have stronger workplace payment and safety laws, that they're more likely to get coup or invaded. Like people have literally been killed for, take Salvador Allende for fucking instance, for trying to make their country a stronger and more self-reliant place. And we're not just now getting to the point in history where countries are starting to elect socialists and left-leaning politicians because of the damage of, that could be done by the neo-colonialism of the United States and its allies.
Activity levels in the third world. Yet another example is how social justice treats the natural hierarchies like teacher and student or parent and child as oppressive.
Why don't you talk about... See, nobody says that, bro. Nobody says parent and child. What they mean is actual unjustified hierarchy. The obvious example is white and black. Why do white people still get hired more than black people when black people can have the same credentials and still do the same job? Why is it that a woman can work at a job 5 or 6 years longer, but a man can work there only 3, but he gets promoted and she doesn't? Those are the arguments against hierarchy. This weird framing about parent, teacher, and all this other shit has nothing to do with like actual social justice movements. What the fuck?
Modern left-wing doctrine says teachers should defer to what students want as much as possible, and parents should listen to their child's whims, even when in most circumstances...
No, you stupid son of a bitch. They say that parents should listen to what their child has to say so they can parent them better. So the child can know, so they can know when the child is uncomfortable, so they can know when the child can or can't do something, or the child feels comfortable coming out, as, I guess we can just go there, like as something that is not necessarily accepted by society. They say listen to the children because the child might want to do something else with their life. That's like saying you have a son that wants to do ballet, but his dad is like, he does roofing. And instead of letting the son do his passion, the dad won't listen to him. They're trying to prevent shit like that. Abusive parental relationships.
The parents and teachers are wiser, and not letting them teach their pupils makes those pupils worse off.
Nobody says that when a child is objectively wrong, just let them do what the fuck they want. Nobody is saying that.
Letting your child or student do whatever they want is actively harming them in the long term, since it isn't enforcing discipline, so they can't internalize the self-control that would allow...
Don't necessarily always need discipline. That's the fucking problem with a lot of people like you in general. I'm gonna try to, because I gotta go to sleep in a few minutes, dude. Come on, we got 3 minutes to make it to 20 minutes in this video before I just do like a call out.
Allow them to thrive and hold society together. However, social justice doesn't believe in real knowledge, love, or hierarchies of skill, with the only force in the world being cynical power games. Think of how many schools don't teach real historical dates, for example, which means no real history actually ends up getting taught. Or how many...
about in Texas? They damn sure did here.
Parents let their kids act like demons, screaming or acting like spoiled brats, which will hold them back in the future at some point.
See my argument earlier about the ballet son and the roofing dad?
Because they won't learn to be polite and considerate. Social justice starts with the assumption that all humans are like blank pawns that are interchangeable, completely ignoring all historic and cultural factors in a purposeful
fucking argument, bro. Oh my
stupidity.
God.
For example, in psychological studies, we've found men tend to be more interested in things and women in people. This explains why, say, this YouTube channel has turned out to be 96% male, or engineers and craftsmen are
not fucking really necessarily. I mean, like, women are interested in doing things, but they've just been shut out of doing things so much that it's normalized for them to like or go into things where they're not necessarily engineering something or working with their hands. And then it's people like you that try to keep reinforcing this narrative that keeps women out of things like, let's say, engineering, architecture, firefighting, carpentry and shit like that is because you got these stupid ass gender norms, and it's hard for a lot of people to break through them. And then when people try to argue against them, like let's say you got this buff ass 210-pound woman that wants to do carpeting, you will have a motherfucker like you screaming and bitching about how she should be doing like cheerleading or something like that. Oh yeah, and you got men that are like, you know, into things like ballet, fashion design, makeup, and doing people hair and stuff like that also, and they not necessarily gay. And if you say somebody is gay just for liking stuff like that, you are part of the problem that motherfuckers talking about. Y'all enforce all these fucking gender norms and stuff, and then you wonder why people don't like y'all. I'm just saying.
Are heavily male. Likewise, why women are in psychiatry, medicine, and childcare more than men. This isn't due to oppression, since this trend is most pronounced in the most gender-equal societies like Scandinavia or Israeli kibbutzes.
It's literally a no bullshit video where or like a Thunderfoot video where it's like the same misinformed argument back to back over again.
Left-wingers think that human nature...
The right and left hate each other. The right wants, at the end of the day, the oppression of minorities and genocide, and the left doesn't want that, and they want to make the world a more egalitarian and better place. That's why they hate each other.
Is inherently malleable, which it largely isn't. Although nurture does have big effects, so does nature. This leads to the left-wing obsession with controlling the discourse, or telling people what words they can and can't say, or with controlling pop culture.
Nobody does that. What? Did you get mad because you got told you can't call people F words or N words and some shit like that? And now you talking about social justice warrior or taking away my words?
Sure. For a person who believes that humans aren't in control of objective reality...
Hold up a second.
Understanding objective truth and how to deal with it is the most important thing, since it allows us to deal with an ever-changing and complicated world. Thus, freedom of speech must be protected, since it allows societies to look for the truth.
Another reason why leftists talk over you motherfuckers because you say factually incorrect information and stuff that you're factually wrong about. You use your little Breitbart articles, you like hackney ass, string together a bunch of arguments and to try to get your little, like, you know, to try to claim that white people are being oppressed in some way or another. You get your little black, one of the good ones, motherfuckers like Candace Owens, to back you up. But when push comes to shove, when it comes to academia, scientists, and historical precedent, you're always proven the fuck wrong. From saying the Civil War is not about slavery to fucking saying that things are going too far after the Civil Rights Act to saying that it's going too far since you don't see just heterosexual white couples on TV. You people never stop complaining and bitching. You are always objectively wrong about everything you say. You ignore like the actual arguments. You don't research history, and you just bitch about things that you don't like when the world is changing for the better for people who you feel like should be under your fucking boot. That's what the fuck is going on here, man.
Truth most effectively. However, from the social justice viewpoint, that humans construct human nature, controlling how people think allows humans to be able to engineer our nature. Anyone who reads any history knows that human nature stays the same no matter what people believe. People can scream at the top of their lungs that their ideology or religion will abolish cruelty and corruption, but once that group gets into power, their elite, unless given incentive structures against those things, will perpetuate them. In fact, the people who are often most dangerous are those that believe themselves to be good, since they have no protections against their own evil.
It's
when a social justice
use Mao instead of Hitler.
person screams at you for saying the wrong word.
Wait a minute, what? Because certain terms become more acceptable. People don't want you saying the R word because it's used to demean people with mental disabilities. People don't want you using this N word, the Negro word, because it refers to a time pre desegregation. And people just prefer you to say black or African Americans. It's easy, man. It's not because SJWs changed it, it's because language advanced with the politics of the United States. So is that what you're saying? You want to go back to calling black people Negroes, or saying, calling people the R word, which we all do offhandedly by accident. Don't get me wrong, but the argument is that it's people out there with serious mental illness who have been demeaned and put low, and demeaned by this word and dehumanized by this word. And politics don't move forward enough for us to stop using it.
Words, they think that you are allowing racism to perpetuate, and they're gradually engineering the human race to superiority. This is very convenient for them, since controlling the discourse like Hollywood or school board curriculums is very easy.
Well, they can controlling school board curriculum. This shit again. What, are you mad because they got in his textbooks that Fort Sumter attacked first? And I'm about to go to sleep, bro. Fuck this, because this would literally take me to 12 o'clock at night to to respond to. And this video is probably like going long enough. Hey, what if what the fuck is this stupid motherfucker's name? And I doubt I actually get anything out of this. Hey, what if art history? I think you a huge white fragility showing bitch right now, complaining about the world just becoming a better place because the world doesn't want to stay in a way where you feel like that where you feel like workers should be under the boot of the rich, or minorities should be under the boot of the straight and white, are advancing and gaining rights, gaining representation in media, and you're bitching about it and can't take it. I feel like you're the sensitive person here and you just don't even see it. What's more, you should be ashamed of yourself. You about 7 or 8 years late. Trump already lost the election again already, where you're getting in on this no bullshit Thunderfoot bullshit, where you put in these Rob Nora ass fucking conspiracy theories back to back about how white people are being oppressed and being turned out of society. And what's even more than that, why are you such a pussy? Why don't you want to engage with the fucking arguments that actual leftists make? Why don't you want to talk about building a welfare state? Why don't you want to talk about the damage done by the drug war? Why don't you want to talk about the deregulation? Why don't you want to talk about the Southern strategy tactics of the Republican Party and how their shit-headed economic policies hurt minorities more than and people in the inner city more than it does white people in the suburbs? Why don't you want to engage with the arguments? Instead, you want to bitch and moan about your made up ass fairy tale bullshit about how you one time you got banned off Twitter because you said the fucking N-word, and you're talking about, oh, the left is controlling the discourse because I can't call people the